Hello YouTubers, you are watching Just Do It Yourself channel, and today we have 2008 Honda Civic. We just finished front brakes and we are moving to the rear brakes. One challenge that I had with the rear brakes was to find the brakes online. It seems like I got it right, so I will leave a link in the description to the video for all the parts and tools that you might need. But to start this job, I believe first thing we need to do is actually get the parking brake loose. So let's get inside the cab. So we're in the cab, and to get to the adjustment screw of the parking brake, we need to get this trim out. So now I'll just pull it like that, and next we'll get this piece out. So pull the parking brake up. Just like that. And then you would see there's this long screw and there is 10mm nut at the end. So it's maxed out right now. So we need to get that nut loose as much as we can. So we get a little bit more adjustment room when we install new brakes. We'll just back it off with the impact. Oh, socket went too deep. Alright, so I've done the adjustment. So now if we check that bolt screw went all the way in, just over there. Now we can go back to the wheels. So as the last step, you want to lower your handbrake all the way down so you have that cable loose. Next we'll remove the wheel, 19mm socket using 1/2" impact. Links to the tools in the description to the video. Next we'll pull off the parking brake cable. Just like that. Next we'll remove two bolts that hold the bracket for the parking brake cable. So I have a socket on one, there is another one just on the other side. We get those two bolts removed. So after we remove those two bolts, this bracket gets loose. Now we can move to the caliper itself. Those are 12mm bolts, one at the top, just over here, one on the bottom. And if we need, we might need to hold those sliding pins on the inner side, but most of the time the cover is not too bad. So get one loose, move to the other one, and then we can just always spin it by hand. Same as the top one. So we had prepared the wire over here, so when we remove the caliper, actually this brake line is quite tight, so we might need to remove another bracket. Just another bolt on the other side, also 12mm, all the bolts are 12mm. Now this brake line is loose. You can go ahead and pull this off. Apologies. We can hang it for now. There is one thing that you want to change rather sooner than later is if your parking brake mechanism retracts all the way. So basically this stopper over here has to hit the stop pin when your cable is loose, and in our case, like, the cable is removed. So this is the sign that this is working as expected. So your parking brake releases all the way. But let me show you what's going on the other side. So on the other side, when I got to this wheel, the parking brake cable was completely off, and the reason is because this lever, if you pull it down, it stays down, it does not retract. I have greased it with WD and now it's moving a bit, so I'll just try keep going back and forth trying to get it loose. Having said that, I think entire mechanism is inside, so I don't think there is much I can do. I will try to get it loose, get it working, but if not, we'll need to replace the caliper, would be my guess. So right now just spraying with WD-40 and basically going back and forth, trying to get it loose. This would seize your wheel and will create lots of issues, so pay attention to that. One little trick would be to remove the spring. It's easy to remove when it's in the up position. Put 17 mil socket and just use your ratchet to get this worked out up and down much faster than hammer and a punch. Next, I'll remove two caliper bolts, and they are 14 mil, top and bottom. Here's the caliper, and it's a good thing to check if your sliding pins are moving. We will be re-greasing them and remove the hardware. Next, we should be able to pull out the rotor itself. We'll put some WD-40. There are two bolts that hold the rotor in place, and a trick to get them off, you put your socket or your bit, you give it a really good slam, and then it should come out easily. Without doing that, I have broken like 3 different bits, even impact one, so now you see they come out quite easily. I'll do the same to the other one. If you don't hammer like that, it will be a mess. Okay, now we will try to hammer it off. For this we will need to use some eye protection and ear protection. And if we have trouble getting that off this way, there are two, actually, yeah, there are two threaded holes, so you can put bolts and push it off. But hopefully this will come off just with the help of the hammer. Alright, so it is loose now. Move the camera because it was super inconvenient to hammer this way. So here's our rotor. Okay, those rear spindles are quite rusty, so we'll give it a good blast with the wire brush and the drill. And for this, definitely use some face mask, because there will be lots of harmful dust. And yeah, let me do that. Basically just going around the bolts, around the center hub, and make sure that there is no debris, rust, big chunks. Now when the spindle is nice and shiny, we'll grab a file and we'll clean this piston. Same idea, to make it nice and smooth, and then we'll clean those two ears that push on brake pad. Also, we can remove this hardware to get it off. You push it kind of one way and down. You might want to clean this area where the new one will go in. Cool. Because this caliper is also assisting the park brake, we need to spin this clockwise to get it in. So now you can see it sticking out. You can use any piece of metal with the handle to turn this, just using the welding chipper. It's not that hard to turn, as long as something fits in those grooves and you have some leverage to turn it. There are special tools, but if you don't, as I said, even like a piece of iron with a little handle will work just fine. So this is where you want it to be. So we'll grab a file and we'll clean those two areas where the sliding pins go. We'll hand this back. So usually you would need to clean those areas, but on this car there is like a washers, C-clip washer, so they're nice and clean, so those are good. My apologies, I lost audio in the previous clip, but essentially what I've done, cleaned all the surfaces where the hardware sits, greased them, put the hardware, greased the hardware, use just a tiny bit grease to prevent any corrosion. With the sliding pins, same thing, we pulled them out, we put the grease, a little bit of grease inside, we covered the sliding pins in grease, replaced the boots, pushed them in, don't overfill with grease since there's not enough room to hold too much grease, and at the end of the day you just try to make sure that they slide freely. So right now I'm covering spindle with the anti-seize for the same reason as we did the caliper bracket. We want to prevent any corrosion and it's getting seized, so if we need to remove it next time, we don't need to hammer as long as we did this time. So we'll just apply anti-seize to cover the surface, prevent moisture and air cause any corrosion. The rotor itself, it comes usually covered with oil for the same reason. They want to prevent corrosion. So you put it on a spindle, you take brake clean, wash it, you spin it a different way, wash it, and only after that you install it. I already done it, but failed to capture that video. Apologies for that. So next we will let's install the caliper bracket first. And having said that, I realized that we need to install those two tiny screws which will hold this rotor in place, and that's the only purpose of those screws, to keep the rotor in place while you are installing the bracket and the caliper. So if for some reason you don't have those bolts anymore, maybe you stripped them, maybe you had to drill them out, you can just use lug nut to temporarily hold the rotor in place. So I'm reusing the same bolts. They were a little bit rusty, so I cleaned them and also applying some blue Loctite. It's not a must, so if you don't have, I would not worry too much about it. But me personally, I prefer to use some blue Loctite every time I work on the brakes. Got the top one started, we'll do the bottom one. And we will go ahead and torque them to 55 foot-pounds. Have the torque wrench installed. I will leave a link to the tools in the description to the video. So that's the top one. So we'll do the bottom one. Great. Next we'll install the brake pads. In terms of the brake pads, the one with the indicator of the wear, you want to put at the back and bottom, pointing down. They should go in quite easily. So if for some reason they are not going in easily, check what's wrong. Next we will apply a little bit more grease on the piston. You can apply it to the brake pads, but and to those two ears that will be pushing the other pad. I prefer to do it on the caliper versus pads. For the caliper bolts, using same old bolts. Also applied some blue Loctite. Then we'll just gently pull these things over and get the bolt started. So we have this spring installed, so it will be kind of resisting a bit. We'll get the top one and then we'll push it in and get the bottom one done. And when they are snug, we will torque them to 17 foot-pounds. So we got our torque wrench, and that's 12 mil socket. That's 17. It's not much at all, so be careful not to over torque it. Now we'll do the bottom one. Same 17 foot-pounds. Next we will attach this bracket. Those two 14, actually 12 mil bolts. So get that tight, as well as we will attach the brake hose bracket. Same 12 mil. And the last step, we will put our brake cable back on. This side was never seized, so it moves freely. So next we want to check the level of the fluid. I should have mentioned, like, you want this cap to be loose when you squeeze the calipers, pushing the fluid back. So you can see that right now it's kind of overfull. But we will go inside the cap and press the brake pedal a few times. So after I press the brake pedal a few times, it's still too high. I will be changing this fluid right away, but you might need to extract a bit since new pads are thicker and they pushed out the fluid from the caliper. Use the syringe, get it out. Just make sure not to get it on any parts of paint. This is highly corrosive. Okay, so next we want to adjust the parking brake, and right now we can pull it all the way up without any resistance. So we will get to our 10 mil nut and we'll tighten it a bit. We'll try now. Still going all the way out, so give it a little bit more. So we want like 5 or 6 clicks before it starts grabbing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's quite tight, so I will do a little bit more. Just to be up. That should be enough. So we'll take it for a drive, let those brake pads break in, and might need to adjust this a little bit more. But at this point, we'll just install the wheels back on, torque it to 100 foot-pounds. Test it before we take it on the road, make sure that all the brakes works. When they do, we'll take it for a spin, brake it a few times, just to make sure that the pads are matched and broke into the new rotors. That should be it. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Check links in the description to the video. And as always, just do it yourself.